Hi, it's Steph, and as we're heading into mid-August, I thought that I'd go around and show you the garden, and we can see what's in bloom. We're expecting some rain today, which I'm really excited about because we have been so hot and so dry all summer. Our lawn is so crispy. So I'm looking forward to us cooling down a little bit, and hopefully the rain brings down our temperatures. But everything in this bed is looking pretty at the moment. This is my main walkway bed, and my double pink knockout roses are now on their second flush of blooms. And the cone flowers have been blooming for about 5 weeks now, and they are getting ready to be deadheaded. Here's my beautiful Luna White hardy hibiscus. These have been blooming for about, this is probably week 2 now, and they look absolutely beautiful. I've had these for a couple of years now in my garden, and I've actually already divided it. I have them on either side of my walkway. And such a gorgeous bloom for this late in the summer. This is a Tropicana rose that I've had for a few years now. I had bought it at Lowe's and I wasn't really sure what to do with it, and so I kind of just tucked it in the front of the border here. But to be honest, it doesn't really do that well, and I feel like it kind of clashes with the other colors in my bed, so I am going to be digging it up and passing it along. I have an apricot straw flower that is now starting to really push out some blooms. I started this from seed, so it took a little while to get going, but it is a really pretty flower and holds up really well in floral arrangements. My Cantina bearded iris is now on its second bloom cycle. This is a reblooming bearded iris, and it's absolutely gorgeous. The cone flowers are in need of some deadheading. The variety I have in my garden here are White Swan, but they are starting to push out some new blooms. I have a drift along the border in the front of Atomic Purple Gomphrena that I actually started from seed. These are incredibly easy to start from seed, and I think I'm hooked. This is my first year having these in my garden, and they're absolutely adorable with these small little pom-pom blooms that are quite prolific. I used to have a border all along the front of my walkway of dianthus called Hori-Hori, and it was a beautiful hot pink dianthus. There was an initial flush early in the spring of these beautiful fuchsia flowers, but then as the season wore off, it just looked like a little tuft of grass, similar to what you would see with a creeping phlox, and it was just boring otherwise. So I pulled it all out last fall, and for now I'm going to use this as an annual border. And I'm really happy with the way that this Gomphrena is looking, and considering I started it from seed, it was so affordable. My beloved shrub, the candy corn spirea. I absolutely love this shrub so much. It is a dwarf spirea, and it starts in the spring and it goes non-stop through fall. You can see all the new growth is that bright red, and then there's yellow and chartreuse green, and then as the fall hits, it starts to turn orange. It's really spectacular. And it blooms. Hot pink little bloom clusters in late spring, early summer. If you're new to my channel, I made a video recently where I show you all of the changes that my double plate candy corn spirea have gone through in terms of color over the season, and I'll link that here. I recently gave my Nepeta or catmint a trim, and now it's pushing out a second flush of blooms. This variety that I have in my garden is called Cat's Pajamas. It's a really great front of the border Nepeta because it only gets to be 12 to 14 inches tall and wide. My Japanese maple, this is a red lace leaf Japanese maple, is also pushing out a bunch of new growth. You can see all of those stems going upward. And in the past I have trimmed the top growth to kind of size control it, but I want to gain some more height on this tree, so I'm actually going to let those go and see what happens. Worst case, you can always trim them off afterwards. But check out that Kink-Free now, how it's filling out right at the edge of my border. Here is a closer shot of my double pink knockouts, and you can see that there is a bunch of new growth where the pink is and some buds. And when it first emerges, it's like this bubblegum pink, and then it fades to a lighter pink. Knockout roses do really great for me, much better than any other type of rose I have in my garden. However, I am considering some changes to this front border, and the debate has been whether or not I want to replace these double pink knockout roses with some white panicle hydrangeas. So that's still an idea that I'm toying with. Here's my bed that I've coined the driveway bed. Well, because it's by the driveway. I really should come up with some more creative names for my garden beds. But this bed is also looking okay, with the exception of my really thirsty and burnt up bobos. So here are my bobo hydrangeas. They are a panicle type hydrangea that have not been enjoying this really hot, dry weather. I have been watering them about once a week with the hose, but they are just not happy. I think the sun in general has been a lot hotter than what we're used to, and so they've been crisping up. So I'm hoping that next year they have a better year, because these are typically one of my favorite hydrangeas, and they're absolutely beautiful. Here are some of the panicles that look a little crispy, but this is typically how beautiful they do look. This Agitarum that a friend shared with me is still looking really lovely. The variety is called Blue Horizon, and she started it from seed. And because it is an annual, it should bloom until our first hard frost. In the front of this bed, I have a drift. I have two drifts actually, of 3 clumps each of this allium. This is a summer blooming allium. It's perennial, and this variety is called Amethyst Bubbles. I have 2 varieties in my garden. I have this one, Amethyst Bubbles, as well as Millennium. This one blooms a little bit later, and the foliage color is a little bit different. This one has more of a blue-green hue. Here's the other perennial allium that is in full bloom at the moment, and this one is called Millennium. It is absolutely beautiful, and I really believe that everybody who has a garden with perennials needs to be growing this plant. They start out tightly budded like this, and then they open up to this big fluffy pom-pom. They're stunning, and nothing bothers these. Because they are part of the onion family, they let out a little bit of an oniony scent, and deer and rabbit stay away from them. This My Monet Purple Effect Weigela is looking absolutely lovely. This is such a beautiful shrub to have in your garden, simply for its foliage. Look how beautiful this is. It's a variegated foliage with a pink, almost red edging. It blooms with these purple trumpet-like flowers in the spring, and then it becomes just a really beautiful foliage accent shrub. Tucked right here underneath my garnet red lace leaf maple, and right behind my Millennium allium, I have a Rock and Grow Lemon Jade sedum. And I really love the texture of this foliage. I think it's a nice contrast and accent to the plants around it. These daylilies are still blooming. The variety is called Orchid Corsage, and these are a mid to late summer blooming daylily. Daylilies only bloom for 1 day each bloom, but because each stem typically has multiple blooms, you'll still get plenty of blooms, and they're absolutely beautiful. I'm not a huge fan of the foliage. It does start to look ratty after they start, dying down, but these blooms are absolutely stunning. And if you want to keep your daylily blooming going, you want to make sure that you look at varieties that bloom early, mid-season, and late season. This David Austin rose is called Carding Mill. It's a beautiful apricot rose, and my boys gave it to me for Mother's Day a few years ago. This rose does struggle in my garden, but it has been putting out some blooms since June. But for the age of it, it's about 3 or 4 years old now. It's still relatively small because I get quite a bit of dieback each year. My coneflowers have been in bloom for about 5 weeks now, since about the first week of July, and they're still looking really good. This variety is Powwow Wildberry, and it starts to fade as they age, but they're still looking really pretty. I can go through and clean them up and get a couple of the more faded blooms off to refresh it. Right in front of it, I have this plant that is the second year it's in my garden. It's called Stokes Aster, and it's absolutely beautiful. Wondering what does this to your coneflowers? I've caught yellow finches over here, so that's likely who is snacking on the leaves of my coneflowers. I have deadheaded my other coneflowers, and they're starting to put out some new blooms. You can see here that my Supreme Cantaloupe has some new buds. I love this one, it's so beautiful. Zinnia is also beautiful. This is Queen Lime with Blotch, and I am enjoying this one very much. It's really beautiful coloring. And here's another beautiful zinnia that I grew from seed. This one is Queenie Lime Red. And it's not red, it's like shades of salmon. But it is absolutely gorgeous. And here is a beautiful delphinium that my friend Catherine grew from seed and shared with me. Anemone is starting to bloom. This variety is called September Charm, and it's a really pretty light pink with a darker pink on the back. This is a really great perennial for that late summer to early fall color. As we head from the patio into the backyard, my shed beds are looking pretty. The grass, not so much. On the side of my shed where I have this trellis, I have a Zephyrine Druin rose growing, and we'll take a closer look at that. But right in front of it, I have my Quickfire hydrangea, and it's starting to change color. Here is my Zephyrine Druin rose that I bought at Lowe's earlier this spring and planted along this trellis. And I cannot believe how much it has grown in just 2 short months. It is already climbing. It's getting like halfway up the trellis. And it has this new cane here that I have to tie up and train upward. It did give me a few blooms earlier on in the season, but it's putting out a bunch of new red growth, which is really exciting. And here is the Quickfire hydrangea that is already starting to change colors of rosy pink, and then it gets a little bit darker pink, almost like a light red, as the season progresses and we get closer to fall. It's an absolutely beautiful hydrangea. It's a panicle type, but it has a little bit more of an airy bloom structure, very similar to I would say like a mountain type hydrangea. My Carl Forester grasses were looking really dry this year from the lack of water and the drought that we're in, so I actually cut them all back. I'm going to give them some fish emulsion and just let them put on a little bit more green growth before the weather cools off. We should get a little bit more grow back. And in the front here, my Autumn Joy sedum. I absolutely love this perennial. This is one that does not care about the drought at all. It still looks gorgeous, and any day now, those blooms are going to turn a gorgeous shade of rosy pink. And this perennial hibiscus, this one is a Proven Winners Perfect Storm hibiscus with this amazing dark foliage and huge dinner plate size blooms that have just begun opening up. If you're able to grow these hardy hibiscus in your zone, I believe they're rated zone 5 and up. I highly recommend them. They are such a stunning bloom and pop of color for your late summer garden. I planted some Peruvian daffodils in the corner here late spring. I had bought the bulbs at Home Depot, and I thought that they would have bloomed early summer, but I didn't get any blooms yet. But we're going to leave them in the ground and see what happens. Maybe they'll bloom next year. And my Hamlin grass in the corner here has started to put out its plumes. My hedge of little lime hydrangeas are doing really well. Despite all of the hot sun and drought, they don't have any burning and look absolutely wonderful. These are probably my favorite panicle hydrangea. It was the Bobo until they started burning. Now it's these. And the Helen Von Steen lamb's ear that I planted in the front here, I thought I would have some time before the limelights got too big and covered them, but that's already happening. So once this fall, once we dig in this cobblestone and make the edge a little bit more permanent, we'll have to move them up a little bit more. But I'm loving the way that this bed is looking. I'm going to go into my vegetable garden so that I can pick a dahlia that I saw that's in bloom. But check out this beautiful amaranth that I bought at the roadside plant stand this spring. It's called Love Lies Amaranth, and it's just beautiful. It's a dark fuchsia pink. Look at this beautiful dahlia. It's either called Labyrinth or Pinhill Watermelon. I'm not sure exactly, but there is an earwig in it. And they love to chop up your dahlias. And this is earwig damage. This is what they do. They literally cut your leaves with their scissors. As we come back around to the front of the house, my right side border is in need of some help. It definitely needs a cleanup. Because my front border on this bed is primarily made up of daylilies, and now that they are pretty much spent, it needs a cleanup and a refresh. These daylilies are late season bloomers, and they're still looking really pretty. I don't recall the variety offhand. It's escaping me at the moment, but I'll flash it across the screen. Phlox is still looking really nice. And I have some sunflowers in the back there. Those were supposed to be Italian white. They're definitely not white. They're yellow. Yellow likes to make its way into my garden. And down on the other end there, I have another Luna White hibiscus. I have one on either side of the porch. And that one is also looking beautiful. That is a Norway spruce in the corner there. I get asked about that tree a lot, and it's a beauty. It's absolutely stunning evergreen. And then I have my Wine and Roses Weigela, which provides a beautiful dark foliage background for this Luna hibiscus. This is Luna White. And do you hear that? That, my friends, is rain. and I could not be more excited. That is my Semphos spirea that looks like a big fern. I love this shrub. The new foliage is so beautiful. This is what the new foliage looks like. And then it turns green. And there's actually a bloom in the back that I'm going to show you. Look at this beautiful fluffy bloom. It looks like these tiny little pearls. And these little white flowers. Beautiful. Here are my front porch planters. So the cosmos are finally starting to bloom. I would consider that a garden fail. I would not plant cosmos in planters again. They just took too long to bloom and they look a little scraggly. But these other planters are still looking lovely. Here I have some Asian garden celosia with some alyssum. I cut back the alyssum recently, so it's starting to flush back out. And then in these smaller terracotta pots in the front, I have some nasturtiums. And I have cut back the butterfly blue scabiosa, the perennial pincushion flower. And they're starting to get really nice new green foliage, and I fully expect them to send out some more blooms before we get our first frost. I am going to go inside now and relish in this wonderful shower that we're getting. Thank you so much for joining me on this mid-August garden tour, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos, and we'll see you soon.